Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Chancellor said Britain deserves a pay rise. But are employees really better off with the introduction of the national living wage? Tonight, this programme has seen a leaked document from a major bakery to its employees cutting their overtime and Sunday pay. The bakery, Samworth Brothers, who supply Tesco, deny changes to staff pay are due to the introduction of the national living wage and are not to cut costs. But one employee told us tonight the changes are harsh. Our senior Home Affairs correspondent Simon Israel has this report.
This bakery in Leicestershire employs more than 1,000 staff. Nearly a third have been there for more than 10 years. It operates 24/7 and is a major supplier of sandwiches to Tesco's. Channel 4 News has obtained documents that show company plans to slash bonuses, including overtime and bank holidays, prior to introducing the living wage. The companies entitled the new deal as Project Fair Reward. The changes include Sunday overtime, where pay for some is currently £13.78 an hour. But from June, the new rate goes down to £13.10. And in 2017, it goes down again to £11.79. And a year later, drops to £10.62. And finally, in 2019, 3 years on, it may fall even further to around £9 an hour. There are cuts in other rates as well. Night shifts and basic overtime will fall 50% by 2019. So today's premiums become tomorrow's standard rate. The parent company, Samworth Brothers, argues this is not a cost-cutting exercise, but a rebalancing of its pay structure, where the majority of its staff, 85% when asked, will be better off under these proposals, which will also mean the end of paid breaks. But some workers see it differently.
Yeah, our money's gone up, but also they've taken our overtime down. They've cut our they're going to cut our breaks to 1 break a day. You know, which in some departments is fair enough, but in the department we work at, it's very harsh on us.
As soon as the living wages came in, yeah, we thought, all right, it'll be a little bit fair enough with a little bit of money, but looking at it, when we started looking at it, they've cut our overtime.
Only yesterday, the UK's biggest DIY retailer, B&Q, gave in to public pressure.
Now we've made the decision to extend that compensation
and doubled compensation to staff who were going to lose out.
It's had a very detrimental effect on the mood in the store.
This London store manager made that happen by publicly warning the company online and on Channel 4 News last week that bonus cuts would leave many worse off. Last July, the Chancellor gave the impression everyone would be better off.
Let me be clear, Britain deserves a pay rise and Britain is getting a pay rise. I am today introducing a new national living wage.
Company after company has had to work out just how to afford it. This Leicestershire bakery will be paying, it says, significantly above the national living wage, even if it means adjusting some of its non-basic rates.
Well, today, Tesco, one of the bakery's main customers, published its latest sales figures showing its return to profit. Our business correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, has been following that story. So, Helia, tell me first, what will Tesco think about this pay deal with staff at one of its suppliers?
Well, Tesco says it wouldn't be right for them to comment about another company's pay structure, but this is an issue that's been happening across the industry. Simon talked about B&Q, but other names in the frame have been Eat, Cafe Nero and even Morrison's.
So why is this such an important issue then?
Look, the Chancellor's whole claim that this is time for Britain to get a pay rise is all about boosting those who have been most caught out by one of the biggest problems in the UK economy. We've had a great recovery when it comes to jobs, but when it comes to wage inflation, we've basically been stuck in pause ever since the financial crisis. The issue with forcing private companies to hike people's salaries is they tend to make cuts in other places. And Dave Lewis, Tesco's boss, described the introduction of the national living wage alongside the government's introduction of business rates or policy on business rates as a lethal cocktail for retailers. Now, today has been a good day for Tesco, actually. They're back in the black. They turned around last year's £6.7 billion loss, and I'm sure they'd be much more keen to be talking about that than getting embroiled in a debate on pay. But the truth is, Tesco, too, has been changing the way it pays its staff and gives benefits to its staff. And this is what I brought up with Dave Lewis when I spoke to him earlier today.
What we have done is we've negotiated with colleagues a different way of thinking about remuneration in total, and that means by equalising some what's called legacy payments of businesses that we bought a long time ago in Tesco.
But hang on a moment, haven't you cut people's pay for overtime? Haven't you cut people's pay for Sunday working? Haven't you cut people's pension schemes? You've got a whole workforce in Ireland who want to strike. These do represent cuts to benefits, don't they?
No, what we've done within Tesco is equalise the benefits that we give across our business in terms of night premiums and shift allowances, but put together on that harmonised basis, they're significantly above the national living wage.
People were being paid 2 times on a Sunday, and now it's only 1.5 times their pay. Isn't that's a cut?
On that one particular aspect, you're exactly right, but it's also balanced by other things that we have done in the totality.
What about the pension scheme? Pension scheme has changed, hasn't it? You've persuaded staff to come out of a more beneficial pension scheme to one that's cheaper, essentially.
But also much more sustainable and is part of a package in total.
How does that actually sit alongside what you yourself earn? According to the last set of results, you could get up to £8 million.
We introduced for the very first time an additional benefit of performance-related pay for everybody within Tesco.
Your performance-related pay is 250% of your salary, which is already over £1 million. That is not on line with the person on the shop floor.
No, but unfortunately, it is on line with what it is CEOs of comparable businesses do.
Well, joining us now fresh from the Commons vote, our Labour MP Siobhan McDonagh, who has tabled a backbench motion about the living wage for Monday, and the Conservative MP Chris Philp, who sits on the Treasury Committee. Siobhan McDonagh, what can you achieve with this motion?
Hi, John. We don't know what we can achieve, but we want to raise the issue. Lots of the people who we're talking about, they work hard, they work Sundays, they work bank holiday Mondays, and nobody hears their voice. So we're going to give them a voice, and we're going to do our best to make things a bit better.
Chris Philp, do you accept that the difficulty with the living wage is that companies do have the freedom to vary the rest of the payments that they make to a worker and finance the living wage through that mechanism? Do you think that's moral?
Well, I'm extremely disappointed by what I've heard this evening about companies changing other aspects of remuneration. But let's not lose sight of the fact that there are 3 million people in this country who have just had a 10% pay rise, the lowest paid people in the country compared to a year ago. And that is fantastically good news. I'm proud that it's a Conservative government that has done that. But I must say I am disappointed by what I've heard this evening. And I would urge retailers and other people to refrain from doing what we've just heard. But I do think even if you account for some of these changes, I think all or almost all of those 3 million people will be better off.
It's very difficult to see, Siobhan McDonagh, how you could prevent companies from simply docking night pay, night shifts, overtime. I mean, you can't bring in a law which says, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
Well, I'm not sure you can't, John, but you're giving this to Channel 4 News, you're raising this issue, has a huge impact. Only yesterday, I met the Chief Executive of B&Q, who, as a result of our campaign and the help from the media, is going to give 2 years to stop people from losing their money. Is that exactly everything we want? No, but is it progress? Yes, it is. And we do have precedent for this. When the Labour government introduced the minimum wage, they began later to realise that companies were including tips to make up the minimum wage, and they came back and they changed the law. So in our debate on Monday, we will be asking the government to close the loopholes.
Chris Philp, you're on the Treasury Select Committee, as I said. What do you think you can do, I mean, as a Treasury Select Committee, to get the Chancellor to try to block the holes in the legislation to allow this kind of activity to occur?
Well, I think if there are specific loopholes of the kind that Siobhan just mentioned, I would certainly support her unequivocally in getting those loopholes closed down. But I would also join her...
Let's just see what we think a loophole is. Is, for example, varying the night shift payments at exactly the moment at which you're bringing in the living wage, is that a loophole? Is the varying of overtime pay at exactly the moment you're bringing in the living wage, is that a loophole?
Well, I'm not sure I'd call it a loophole because they are entitled to pay whatever overtime
so
rates
what are the
they
loopholes?
agree. Well, I think things like the tip point we just heard about, that is an example of people malevolently trying to circumvent the law, and I would certainly support Siobhan in closing that down. I would also add my voice to Siobhan's in saying to the people who run these big companies, who are paying their workers quite low wages, to exercise, to be responsible and to refrain from, I'm not sure we can legally stop them, but I would ask them to just morally exercise restraint when it comes to looking at the other elements of people's package. I heard a story, I think, over the weekend saying that a sandwich chain had withdrawn free lunches from their workers as a result of this. And I do think that's wrong.
John, if I could give you just one real live example from Banwell Bakery in Leicester, where they're cutting the amount, the pay rate for Sundays, for night work, for bank holiday work. So it will mean in 2 years' time that somebody will be earning £3 an hour less than they currently are on, and that can't be right. They pay the same rent, the same gas and electricity bills as anybody else.
Now, we've witnessed a rare and beautiful thing here tonight, which is a Conservative and a Labour MP forging a coalition right there on air to try and sort this thing out. But not many people know what a backbench motion is going to achieve. Is there some way in which you can use this coalition moment to bring about change?
I hope so. I'm glad that Chris agrees with me. We want to get these people paid properly. We don't want them to lose money. And anybody who supports us in that is a friend of mine. And on Monday, we'll be highlighting some of these companies, and hopefully we'll have a vote where we'll be encouraging the government to close the loopholes. I hope that Chris will join us.
If the bell rings, the bell rings for thee. Thank you both very warmly indeed for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.